Australia's business channel. This is Mediaweek.
Hello, welcome to the program. Ahead, the digital free-to-air channels going from strength to strength. Why they're surprising even the people who run them. News Limited turns to kids, betting on a fresh revenue stream from a parenting portal, plus all the big news of the week across the sector. But first, Network 10 is about to unveil a new program which aims to get Australians talking about the big and contentious issues. Take a look.
Is porn just a normal part of everyday life? Yeah, I think it is.
No, I don't think it should be.
If people want to use it, do it. That's fine.
It's got to the point where it's past harmless.
I think it's important for us to be able to explore ourselves or our sexualities.
It is okay, and I'm an advocate for it to some degree.
Can of Worms comes from the production house which has brought us Enough Rope, Hungry Beast, The Gruen Transfer and most recently AFP. That house is of course Zapruder's other films, and its EP and head of production is Anita Jacoby, who joins us now along with our co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Anita, thanks for coming in. Now, I guess just tell us, how did you get involved with Can of Worms? What appealed to you about the idea of this show?
Well, what happened was, as you know, Andrew Denton and I work with Zapruder's other films, and we'd met Ian Dixon, Dicko, quite a while back, late last year, and he and his manager David Wilson had brought in the germ of Can of Worms, because ever since Dicko had been a judge on Australian Idol, he'd actually looked at the whole area of political correctness. You know, he'd obviously been in trouble for having bailed out Polini on Australian Idol and talked about her weight problem, and I think he was really shocked by how vicious the attack was, because he'd actually referred to somebody's weight. So he'd started mulling over a show that looked at issues and topics that were kind of cutting through all the political correctness that we usually find on talkback radio and in the media today. And so that's what he came and spoke to us about.
We're sort of familiar with shows on TV with people talking to each other. You do Gruen Transfer, of course, which has been an amazing success. There's Q&A on the ABC Monday nights. How will this one be different, or will it be similar? Well,
it's interesting that Dicko uses the expression. I think it's really, it actually goes to the core of what we're trying to do. It's, I guess, if Q&A went to if people went to university, they'd be seeing Q&A, but if they went to Bunnings, they'd be seeing Can of Worms. And that's exactly what it's about. It's probably an interview show that looks at human values. And what we're going to do is we're going to have three studio guests. We're going to throw worms are curly questions. They're curly moral questions. It could be like the one that you saw there, or it could be, is it okay to tell my kids there's no God? Which is a fairly could be seen as a contentious story, but it's actually topics that we should be talking about. We should be talking about them to our kids or our families. So we're going to put those on the table, and what we're going to do is ask our guests to say yes or no immediately. They can't sit on the fence. And these aren't experts. They're not white coats. They've got to have an opinion one way or another, and then we're going to dissect why they said yes or no and see if we can't get them to reassess why they came to that original decision.
So it's studio based, because you know, in all the promotions that we've been seeing have been sort of vox pops, which makes me immediately think of what was probably several years ago now, but Vox Populi on SBS, very different to that style of show.
There is a component, there is obviously a vox pop component, but what we've also done too is we both survey our studio audience, but what we've done is we're working with Roy Morgan's, the leading polling company, and what they're going to do is take those worms, those questions, out into the field, and they're going to survey a large percentage of Australians and give us the feedback on what Australia thinks about it. So it's not just our guests in the studio, it's not just our studio audience, but it's actually what Australia thinks about these topics.
And are you steering clear of the topics that you know, that are in the news all the time, that are driven by politicians?
Yeah, we're not news and current affairs. We're not politics. We are really, and I'll be killed for saying this, we're the stuff of life. You know, if I say that, it sounds pretty wanky. But in fact, that's what it's about. It's the stuff that we really care about, that go to the core of who we are. And so they're the kind of topics that we'll be doing. I mean, you know, I know you showed the porn one. It might be also, is it okay to dress up as Hitler and go to a fancy dress party? I mean, they are moral conundrums. Would I be comfortable in doing that? If I say yes, I would, can Dicko kind of talk me around to saying, well, the flip side of that, what does that actually mean?
As a business, you've obviously done talk shows well, you've done observational documentary, you've done some comedy. Are there genres you don't
go into.
Want to delve into, or is anything up for?
I think anything's up for grabs. So long as the idea is strong enough, we will look at any idea on its merit. Absolutely. I mean, I guess what sets Zapruder's a little bit apart is every single program we've ever developed is an original concept. That's also means that we do a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, it's not like we have a format and we mould that format into a new show for Australian audiences. I mean, even with Can of Worms, we've looked at what we've done from the idea through to the creation of every single element of that show. And that's what we pride ourselves on. So I think if it's a great idea, we'll go into any kind of genre of television.
Make it risky though too for your kind
of course it can.
It's not
but risky's exciting. Risky. I mean, why would you want to be too safe? You know, it doesn't mean it always works, but it's well worth giving it a go.
Would you be interested in doing another format show if you found something overseas that you thought was fantastic? Are you the sort of production company that would think, give it a go here, or you prefer just to stick with your original stuff?
We haven't to date, but if the idea was strong enough and we felt it was also, I mean, we like to do shows that have got a bit of, they've got integrity and they've got ideas and there's an intelligence about what we're doing. And so that idea would have to have those core values.
I remember I interviewed you once ago for the magazine, I think it was, maybe a year or two ago. You talked about, Enough Rope was obviously probably your biggest single hit, I guess. And you said, look, you might revisit that if you found another exciting host. I mean, is there any update on the next Andrew Denton?
Look, I think we're always looking. Andrew is a very, very hard act to follow. But I wouldn't say that Enough Rope is only our success. I think Grew and Transfer... I would say...
longest running?
No, I would say Grew and Transfer last year and Grew and Nation together. If you actually look at those ratings, I think people tend to forget. It was one of the 5 top shows in Australia last year, and that was with a combined audience of 1.8 million weekly, and that was for Grew and Planet, so Grew and Nation, I beg your pardon. So I think we forget, that's been an enormous homegrown success as well.
Another Grew and spin-off in there?
I hope so. And yes, indeed there is.
Yeah. Okay. This year, will we see that?
You might.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell us more?
No.
Pull her teeth out here?
No, you'll have to be watching, but yes, indeed there is a spin-off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
You're one of those production companies, you're in a position where you've worked for free-to-air, for the big commercials, you've done stuff for Foxtel, for the ABC. Do you have to sort of change the way you model things when you're working for a different boss? You pretty much just do your own thing as you go?
Oh no, we're mindful of if we're working for the national broadcaster and if we're working for commercial networks, but the fundamentals are still the same. We lock ourselves into a budget, we lock ourselves into a creative concept to a degree, and then the evolution happens once we get into developing that concept. But I don't think they're very different in a lot of ways. I think the principles are still the same.
The whole Freeview thing with all the digital channels, which have sort of no one was sure how they'd go, and we're still learning things about them even this week, I guess, when we see new audience highs and stuff like that. But has it opened up new opportunities for the production sector? I mean, if all these extra channels, could that be new commissions and stuff like that?
I think it does open up opportunities. I think it's still so, way too early for us to really know what those opportunities are. It certainly seems to open up opportunities for low-budget programming. But I think we as a production company are just sitting back and watching what those opportunities are. I think other production companies are probably doing the same. I think the networks are still trying to work out what those opportunities are.
Is it a good time to be a TV producer in Australia?
I think so.
There seems to be, the audience loving Australian content. There seems to be a lot of commissions, a lot of work.
Well, we've got 7 shows happening at the moment, which for a medium-sized production company, all of them homegrown. I think that's across 3 different networks. So I think, the market's very buoyant. And the great thing is it's always driven by good ideas. So if you've got a good idea that you feel can travel the length and you can pitch it to a network and they can see that it'll fit into their lineup, then yes, you can get that go ahead and get it up. So from our position, it is pretty buoyant.
I'm just interested, you've got a very strong background in quite serious news and current affairs through your career. We seem to be seeing, I suppose, a little bit of a resurgence with programs like Q&A of a real interest of the Australian public in quite serious topics. I mean, you've obviously still got your Today Tonights and your current affairs, which rate very strongly. Do you take heart from those kinds of programs and the interest that you see there of people wanting to see that kind of serious, intelligent television?
Yes, but I wish we saw more of that, to be honest. One of my greatest regrets is there's not enough investigative journalism on television today. You know, shows like Sunday used to do great investigative pieces. I see Sunday Night and 60 Minutes, you know, they do some investigations, but there aren't nearly enough so that we can actually nail the really decent yarns. The Graham Reeves story, you know, the Butcher of Bega that, you know, Ross Coulthard did for Sunday, where he won a gold Walkley. I mean, that to me was really good investigative journalism, and I regret that we don't do enough of that now. I think Four Corners does. I think Four Corners has got great latitude, and I think they increasingly kick goals in developing and bringing to the table really good, strong Australian stories. So yes, it is heartening to see Q&A, but I'd love to see more of that.
More, yeah, 'cause the budgets have certainly been trimmed.
Absolutely, which is part of the problem.
Yeah, all right. Great to have you on. Thanks for coming in. Good
Thanks
luck
for your
with
interest.
it. We look forward to watching the show. All right, let's just before we go to ad break, we're going to check on the media sector's performance on the share market this week. Chris Weston from IG Markets. Here he is.
Yeah, good afternoon, Kylie. I mean, sentiment recently has been very, very poor globally. People have been seeing a slowdown in economic performance, in PMIs, and people's slowdown in consumer spending, and people have really been quite reluctant to take any trades in the media space because of its leverage to the global to the different economies globally. If you look at the performance in the last week, it has been okay. We've seen the media sector up about 0.5%. The overall broader market has been up 0.5% as well. But that's some very embryonic signs of people looking to dip their toe in the water. Let's look at some of these stocks year to date. I mean, Austar's been the big performer because we have seen some corporate activity there. The stock's up 40% year to date, and then we've got News Corp up about 3% as well. In recent times, it's leveraged the US dollar, which has been doing okay, has held that stock in reasonably good stead, and it's seen as a bit of a defensive stock in that space. Elsewhere, I mean, if you're looking at the likes of APM, if you're looking at the likes of Seven West Media, and even Fairfax, the stock's down. All those three are over 30% down. I think in the last couple of weeks we've seen quite a lot of tax loss selling. Traders saying to themselves, "Well, I'm setting quite a long-term loss on these. Let's realise this loss, and we can potentially write this off against income. We can write this off against other gains in our portfolio." Now, looking at Fairfax, I think longer term, most analysts now see this as quite a good buying opportunity. The stock's up 2% today because we are seeing some positive sentiment in the market. If you look at the valuation, it's very cheap. The stocks, as I say, is down 31% year to date. It's trading on about 8 times forward earnings as a consensus, trading about 6.1 times forward EBITDA as well. And generally, there are a number of key catalysts which are coming up. We are potentially going to see a sharing agreement between Fairfax for their printing presses with APM and News Limited as well. We're seeing potentially we're going to see Trade Me going floating and separating. We're going to see $20 to $30 million worth of cost savings. So further down the line, 6 to 12 months, this stock should be trading high, given that it has had a significant pullback. News Corp's an interesting one. It's pretty flat today. As I say, the stock's outperformed the sector on a year-to-date basis, and we did see them today or overnight coming out and selling their MySpace assets. Now, I don't think anyone's really surprised by that. People had been expecting them to sell this for some time. They have sold this for $35 million US. Now, considering as they bought this back in 2005 for $580 million, you know, obviously it hasn't been a particularly good trade for Rupert Murdoch, and I think that's part of the problem. People are concerned with his acquisition trail. We're looking at the B-Sky-B acquisition. That's likely to come off, and we've been talking about that for some time. We're likely to hear more news about that. But given they are going to retain a 5% stake, they have failed miserably in trying to turn that business around. It has been all about Facebook, and I think most analysts had written down their value to zero. So given the fact that was loss-making and actually hurting their bottom line, I think the stock should do reasonably well off the fact they just netted 35 million and it had been written down to zero. But overall, the overall space has been performed very, very negatively, just because we have seen a slowdown. So hopefully, if we do see a bit of a pickup in sentiment in the short term, which we're hoping we're going to see, these media stocks with their high beta nature should do reasonably well.
Coming up on Media Week, on the box, Tracy Grimshaw notches up her 30th year in television. That and plenty more in just a moment.